I'm Anne-Marie DeMars, and I'm probably the luckiest parent ever of a child with a speech disorder. I wouldn't have said that when Rhonda was little. If you had told me 25 years ago that someday my kid would be on Saturday Night Live, I wouldn't have believed you. When Rhonda was born, we thought she was dead. And they said, take her home. Children are resilient. She'll hopefully learn to walk and talk. And she had all the milestones set up, crawled, walked, but she didn't learn to talk. I mean, she made sounds, but you couldn't understand them. It would be like, I want the blah, blah, blah. And it was just terrible. I remember one year, if you read her book, My Fight, Your Fight, she talks about the ball grin, which was a really huge thing. On their birthday, they could get whatever they wanted. And we're hoping she's a little kid. She'll want something. She was turning 3 or 4 and she wanted a ball grin. And none of us had any idea. And we'd say, what do you want? A ball grin. Her little face would get all red. And you know how that is when they want to say something they can't make anybody understand. Well, we finally figured out that a ball grin was a Hulk Hogan wrestling buddy. But it didn't always work out that well. Rhonda still remembers when she was going into kindergarten and she wanted a backpack, but we could not understand which one she wanted. And she would point because we'd say, well, do you want the Barbie one? And she would point, and we still didn't get it. Finally, she's like, fine, yeah, have the Barbie one. And then she says, yeah, and I really wanted a My Little Pony one now that we could understand her. And she says, yeah, I went to kindergarten the first day, and there's another kid that had the My Little Pony one. I was so mad. So there's that frustration of your kid not being able to express themselves, and you see how tough it is on them. And there's a difficulty of you not being able to communicate with them. And there's also the impact it has on them. So after we moved to Minot, and Rhonda was in speech therapy for years, and she could somewhat express herself, one of the first things she said to me was, I'm dumb, Mom. And I said, you're not dumb, sweetheart. And she said, yes, I'm dumb. I don't have the words. Maria and Jennifer, they have the words. And it's not something that other people understand, not the child themselves. Maria and Jennifer are a year and 4 years older than Rhonda, and they would say to their little friends, "We can't tease Rhonda because she was born retarded." And I would yell at them, "She is not retarded. Go to your room." But you can't expect other kids to understand, or even your own child, and it's really tough. And I was really, really worried. My husband, on the other hand, used to always say, "She's a sleeper. Don't worry, she's a sleeper. She'll catch up." And boy, was he right on that. I think there were a few things I could speak not as an expert. I'm not a speech pathologist by any means, but as a mom, where I was extraordinarily lucky. My first real suggestion to anybody who's a parent, that if you think your child has a speech disorder, don't let anybody tell you they don't. If you're convinced there's something wrong, I'll bet you know that child better than anybody else. When Rhonda was probably 2 years old, 2.5, I said to the pediatrician, there's something not right. She's not talking. And the pediatrician said, oh, well, you speak 2 languages at home, and kids take a while to assimilate. And if she'd been my only child or my first one, maybe I would have bought that. But I said, you know what? My other 2 kids live in the same house. And Jennifer's only a year older, and she talks fine. And Maria talked by the time she was 1. I would come home from work and at the university, and she'd say, how was your day, Mom? Did you have a fine day? And you can't understand a single word Rhonda says. There's something wrong. So then they give me the speech about, don't compare your children, and all children are different. And I went along with it for a few months, and fortunately, here's where the luck comes in again. I was at the university with someone who was getting a PhD in language development and was bilingual. Do you know how hard it is to find a bilingual speech pathologist? And she, out of the goodness of her heart, followed Rhonda around for an entire day. Went to the playground with her, went to preschool with her, came over to the house with her, did some testing, and at the end of that, she said, look at this chart. Here is the number of words the average child speaks at this age, and down here is the number of words Rhonda speaks. And you didn't need a PhD in anything to realize there's something very wrong with this picture. So when I went to Minot State and the faculty there, I was super lucky again that they have a really outstanding speech pathology clinic. And if you look at the recommendations for children who have apraxia, it's that they should get frequent intensive therapy. Individual therapy is better than group therapy. And by pure luck at the clinic, I was able to get Rhonda in 2 or 3 days a week with individual clinicians. Another thing that's highly recommended is to work intensively with the child at home, which we did because she had those two older sisters, plus my husband, plus myself. So I've often wondered if I was a teenage mom without a lot of education, without the resources to get Rhonda into speech therapy 3 times a week, where would I be? Where would she be? Would she have gone to 2 Olympics? Would she have been in several movies and starring in more coming up, which have won a couple of world titles? I don't know. I really don't think so. So that's where I say I'm probably the luckiest parent of a child with a speech disorder ever. The the advice I can give people would be, first of all, don't give up. Make sure that you get that speech therapy and don't take no for an answer. I understand how desperate people can be when your child's saying I'm dumb, and when they're saying things like I want the blah, and you have no idea. But really, really, science is the answer. Professionals are the answer. All of those things, I understand how someone would like to believe that it's a gluten-free diet, or they're allergic to rhubarb, or they have allergies, or it was because they got vaccinated or didn't get vaccinated. None of that is true. Seriously, I understand how desperate people can be when your child does not seem to be doing the things that you think a child ought to be able to do. But the tried and true path is really the answer. I mean, it was for our family, and I would strongly, strongly encourage people away from all of those things if they sound too good to be true, if they sound a little flaky. Trust your instincts on that one too. The other thing I want to say is maybe it's for the best. And I know that sounds crazy, but Rhonda learned to swim before she learned to talk. Long before she learned to talk. In fact, we originally thought that she would go to the Olympics in swimming. Perhaps because she was limited in language early on, she excelled in every kind of physical activity. That was her way to express herself. And Rhonda always says that everything happens for a reason. And I, I did judo too, and I won the world championships. And I busted my knee up when I was young. And I said, if I hadn't hurt my knee when I was a teenager, maybe I would have won the world championships 2 or 3 times. And she said, yeah, Mom, maybe. Or maybe you would have just been kind of good. So, as tough as it is now, if you have a child that has difficulty communicating, if the other kids say, oh, they're retarded, you know what? Somebody who got the sports book of the year this week also was that kid. And now she has the words. So hang in there.